Data, information, facts, and discussion about things that affect you at home and in your business. Welcome to the Conversation Chamber, brought to you by the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce.
Good day, everybody at home, and welcome to another episode of the Conversation Chamber by the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce. Today, we're going to talk about employment. What does it mean to be employed in Bermuda? What's the story between the employee and the employer, between local and international business, between locals and expats? For today, we're going to dig into a local perspective. So let's talk about it for a second. The situation of employment in Bermuda has changed over the past few decades. And especially since 1990s, when tourism was probably the most important thing and was our bread and butter. Those good old days from before still in everybody's mind, even today. What it was like to be a bartender and the service industry. It was fantastic. What's important is, what is Bermuda now for employment, and what is that question? The question has always been, what is the best workplace that we can all expect? The question now is, are we changing that conversation? Are we in that conversation? Do we understand the context of that question today, in this time, where IB and international business is growing at a really great rate, where tourism is a different product, where people working in tourism are paid differently, compensated differently, they have different hopes and dreams? How does it all work together? So at the Chamber, we look at how can we take what we understand as information to help create a better work environment for everybody. A better Bermuda means more jobs, more opportunity for everybody. That's the most important thing. To do that, we have to go beneath the surface and perhaps be a little impolite. We need to speak some things that you are thinking, say them out loud, and also talk about possibilities. So today, let's consider this a safe space and say some things out loud. We've got some great guests today, and we're going to talk to people from an employee perspective, an employer perspective, and what can we do to have a better Bermuda as well. We'll be right back.
You're watching the Conversation Chamber, brought to you by the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce.
Founded in 1906, the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce is the island's oldest and largest trade organization, comprising some 500 members, representing virtually every industry sector, with a clear focus on advocacy, networking, communication, and lobbying. The Chamber stands as a singular voice for commerce in the community. Organized by divisions, our members seek to address issues of mutual interest by market sector. The Bermuda Chamber of Commerce is a member of the International Chamber of Commerce and the American Chamber of Commerce Executives. We envision a Bermuda in which business can prosper.
Connect, learn, and grow with the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce. Benefit from government engagement, exposure, and community interaction. Join a network of successful leaders and innovators. Access exclusive resources, events, and discounts. Help us shape the future of Bermuda business. Join the Chamber today. Visit bermudachamber.bm. Welcome back. You're watching the Conversation Chamber, brought to you by the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce.
And welcome back. With us today is Rudy Strobel. Rudy's been kind enough to join us. He has been an employee in Bermuda and has had a great work experience over quite a number of years. Rudy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I moved out of Bermuda when I was 5, and I moved back to Bermuda when I was 30. And I love it, and it's a great place to live, and Bermuda's just Bermuda. I just love it so much.
And what kind of industries have you worked in?
Well, basically, the only industry I've really worked in is service industry.
Yeah.
Working at the bar. I work at a bar, and that's all I've done since I've come back to Bermuda, working at a bar. And now, of course, I have another job too, and I do custodial work too.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So there are a number of business owners and managers who are saying that it is right now, it is difficult for them to find an employee. They actually have some people saying that anybody that wants a job should be able to get one right now. And How do you feel about that?
Well, I really believe that, yes, anybody can get a job, but not everybody's made for certain jobs. And not only that, you have to have proper training, people to train these people. Because you just can't expect somebody to come onto a job. Let's say, for instance, bartending. You can't just expect to put somebody into a bar and say bartend. You have to have somebody to train this person,
Yep.
and not train them to be like that person, but to train them to do the job so they can do it best the way they do it.
Mhm.
Uh,
So it's been said that our unemployment rate right now is somewhere around 2%, and that leads into some sort of difficulty with finding some people to do jobs. Um, Total other contrast would be that some people are saying, well, I may not be able to get the job that I want, but at least I can kind of take that job. I've heard some managers and some employers say, well, if you're going to take a job, how about you perform the job well until you find the other job that you really want? What do you think about that?
yeah, it's funny because I believe that once you take a job, you should do the job the best to your best abilities, especially if they give you the proper training for the job. Because a lot of people go to work and they're just doing their time. So they go there from 8 to 4 and then they leave. But there's a lot more to working than just going to work and going there from 8 to 4. You have to do the job properly for what you're getting paid for and for what they're asking of you at the job.
And do you find that to be are you learning that sentiment? I mean, you're saying that basically that people could be more productive at work. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
And so with that, you have low unemployment. Therefore, basically, it means I can almost find the kind of job that I want.
Yes.
I may not be very motivated sometimes to do what I have to do over there because, I can get a job someplace else if things don't quite work out. Some people have that mentality.
Yeah, of course, there's going to be some people like that, but once you find the job that you enjoy,
Yeah.
then you'll probably put your whole heart into it. But I believe that even if you don't, it's not the job you want, I still believe that you should give 100% or 90% of yourself for that job. I believe that you should give your all.
Great. What do you think about young people?
I think young people need somebody at the job that's going to steer them in the right direction, have some kind of mentorship at the job. And I'm not saying telling them exactly what to do because you have to bring out the best in them. So when you're training somebody, you have to give them what your knowledge and let them take from what you have learned over the years of working and take some of that and use it. And then on the other hand, then they create themselves as that kind of worker, what kind of worker they want to be.
Tell me your thoughts around expat workers versus Bermudian workers being in Bermuda.
Okay, that's a difficult subject because I believe that we need to get more young Bermudians working. I really believe that. And if we bring in, we need expat workers for sure, because we need people to obviously work because we probably don't have enough people to do all of the work that we have in Bermuda.
The government says right now that we need 8,000 more people.
Yes, and we do. And we need to start getting young people into the job, even if they don't want to keep on doing the job that they're doing when they're young. Because just remember, people are always growing. So let's say, for instance, they come in as a busboy and they work from a busboy to a waiter, from a waiter to a bartender, from a bartender to a manager, from a manager to a general manager. They're working their way up. Or they might not even want to do that. They might want to go from a busboy, and from a busboy, they go to a waiter, and then they go away to university, come back to Bermuda, do some more waiter work, and then go back to university and so on and so forth, and then get into international business, things like that.
So when I grew up, I didn't have a cell phone.
Yes.
Yes. I'm old. There was no internet.
Yes.
The microwave society. When people nowadays, young people, want things so fast and potentially so easy, what do you say? How does a manager or a business person reconcile the speed at which a younger person wants to arrive?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that one time we were that young person. And I think at 21, I wanted a lot of things also, and I wanted them quick. Everything was fast when you're young. But as you get older, you want people to slow down and you want to say, okay, it's not going to all come tomorrow. But we have to make sure that we take these younger people and we don't mold them. We just want to show them the right direction and make sure that they do it in a certain pace, like not quickly like a microwave, you know what I mean? Because there's always steps to doing everything right.
That's true. Um, some of the I'm just going to go down a list of some of the things that we hear about employee issues, if I can. Miscommunication and sometimes ineffective communication at work. Unclear expectations going from on high down to the employee themselves. Feeling being pushed too hard, like I'm too much is being asked of me. What do you think about those things?
Well, I think communication has to be the biggest thing when it comes to employment with employers. If you can go and talk to your employer and tell them exactly how you feel or or her how you feel, then it's good if they have an open door policy. But if you feel that you can't talk to your employer, there's a problem, especially when it comes to a job. If they're hiring you to do a job, then they should hire you. They should say, okay, this is what I want you to do, A, B, and C. They can't ask you to do any more. And if they ask you to do more, then they should state that. That's how it works, because people go into jobs saying, okay, this is what my job is. And then they start asking you to do more stuff. And working in the service industry, it's a big team sport, because if let's say, for instance, if the busboy isn't picking up the plates to take them back to the kitchen to be washed, then we can't serve any more plates because they're all going to be dirty. So you really need a big team in order to make everything work. And everybody has to be treated with respect too. That's one thing you have to do.
So you're in the hospitality industry.
Yes.
Weekends, nights, holidays, unsociable hours, having to work when the party is on. There are a lot of people that say there's got to be somebody else that can do that job. Surely. Do you find that there's enough people around that can fulfill all the positions in the industry?
You mean Bermudians or just
Sure.
people in general?
And you could both.
Well, there's more than enough people to fill those jobs. You just have to find the right people to do those jobs, the people that enjoy doing that kind of work and working on weekends, during holidays, and so on and so forth. And not only that, just remember, if you want the time off, you have to voice that opinion to your boss. You have to say to your boss, listen, I can work all of these Fridays, but can I have one Friday off once a month or something like that? And I think he probably would give it off to you or her.
So, okay. And other things like bullying or harassment. I mean, they're on the list. I didn't know. I mean, there's been changes in legislation to talk about how these things need to be treated a little bit better. Feedback and recognition is there. Stress and burnout.
Yeah.
What about that one?
I don't know. Well, I don't know too much about stress, because in the service industry, it's a very stressful job when it's busy.
Yeah.
When it's busy, it's very stressful. And the bullying aspect of it, I don't see too much of that in the service industry. I just see more favoritism when it comes to, let's say, shifts, working with certain people and stuff like that. But in the end, if you're good at your job, it tends to work in your favor. Favoritism, really, in the end, it goes out the window.
Thanks, Rudy. I really appreciate that.
Thank
You've given us some really good insight.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back.
It's time for the Data Break with Stephen McGinnis.
Great. Thanks, Marika and Rudy, for that great discussion about how the role of the employee is so important to the business framework and what the expectations of employees are. There was one quote that actually Rudy mentioned, I think that was quite telling, was that we have to recognize we're all young at some time. I think that's also a fair reflection of what our workforce trends are too. So when we see the data here, we can see that from a standpoint of back in 1999 over here, that our workforce was quite even field when it came to our workforce that was under 35 and workforce over 45, around 35% each. In 2022, we've now seen a transition over all these periods that we're now at 21% of our jobs are under 35 years old and 55% now are over 45 years old. So obviously this is a paradigm shift that we have to be ready for and mindful of. So next part is around how are people happy in their jobs, or what are they looking for? So again, Rudy made a very important quote here that once you find a job you enjoy, you will put all your heart into it. So one of the things that we are able to see through the labor force survey is, are people looking for new main jobs? And that's right here. We can see in November 22's report, about 14.3%. And in May, it's increased slightly to 15.8%. Now, obviously, there are some limitations to measuring this period over period, but it does reflect the trend there. Then why are people looking for new jobs? And we can see it's remained steady around 38% for higher pay. Qualifications, use of those qualification skills have changed a bit, dropped a little bit down to from 30% to 26%, but pretty much everything else remained fairly consistent around improving working conditions, more convenient hours, and all other categories. But this gives a rough view of what people might be looking for when they are looking to move jobs. So if we look at our next bit of information, we can see the percent of total employees that have actually applied for a new job. So the prior page was looking at who's actually potentially looking. This is actually looking at people that have actually gone out and actually made an application somewhere else. Now, this is for jobs, for new main jobs and additional jobs. And we can see the trend is steadily rising right now. So for May 23, we're up to almost 7%. Now, about 1% of that are people looking for secondary jobs. So it's about 5.9, 5.8% are actually looking for new main jobs. So this just shows how the landscape is changing for employees there. And if we look at the final bit of information that we have for this, it's looking at what the underemployment trends are. Now, there's three types of underemployment. Time-related, so around hours, skills-related, around what your qualification skills are, and then income-related, around what your expectations of pay are. And as we can see, the total underemployment percentage has actually been declining over this period of time. However, the number one category that remains consistent across most of these periods is around income-related. Now, most of this income-related is also around high school educated workers, which are the lowest median income too. So there's probably a bit of a trend within that. But it also shows that people feel that their jobs, they're being more suitable for their workforce jobs. But that's a quick synopsis of some of the data behind the comments that Rudy's mentioned. But we'll kick it back to Mariko now for our next presentation.
You're now inside the conversation chamber.
And welcome back. We are now joined by Alex Ducuto. Alex Ducuto is a businessman and a business manager. He's been around the block a few times in Bermuda. Alex, welcome, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. Alex Ducuto. I lead a group of companies focused in the construction industry. We employ about 100 people. We employ a lot of entry-level workers, mostly Bermudian males is my biggest demographic. We employ more than a handful of people over 65, including some 70-year-old people, because we need people, and if they're willing to work, then we're willing to give a chance. So I have been around the block. It's been about 25 years, 15 years owning my own firm. So a lot of experience employing people in Bermuda.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us about some of the perspectives, some of the challenges. Let's start with the challenges, then we'll go to some of the positive bits.
Sure. It's a good time to be in the construction industry generally. There are a good number of opportunities, but they create challenges in that finding people is probably number one on the top of the list. Finding people who are qualified, people who are willing to work, do the job. We're kind of similar to the restaurant industry in that we do have a lot of entry-level sort of capacity and availability for people, but we also need pretty skilled people to do the work. And finding those people, particularly the nature of our business, it's not like we set up a restaurant and wait for the people to come and we have 40 seats and we know what our capacities are. 1 year we're doing a $10 million job, and then we might be bidding on jobs half as big 6 months later. And so there's a lot of up and down, and it's very difficult to
time and right size the number of people we need. And so when we need them right away, usually, because we've won a job and they want to act right away. And so finding people quickly is a real challenge. And at the moment, I think we've talked about the stats that are kind of the low unemployment rate is resulting in, when we're running ads and looking for people, we get very low response at the moment.
So you have a customer. I need my thing fixed, my thing built. I need Alex and his company to resolve this problem for me. I need it done in a timely fashion. And if you can't find people, what's the solution?
Wait. Normally, and there's a lot of customers that are being asked to wait and be patient, in periods, and there tends to be it fluxes between like trades, and as jobs are finishing at the same time or starting at the same time, you might have different pressures on different trades and different companies. So there might be the tile companies that experience a flush of work at a time, and creates different pressures on the industry. It's hard to find people locally, but it's also hard to find people, globally, and attract them to come to Bermuda with their skills. And even at there was the time, I think, when Bermuda paid pretty handsomely in the world market, and you could attract people quite easily in our trades, in the construction trades. I would say that's becoming less and less so.
So that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Why is it more difficult to get somebody to come to Bermuda than before?
I think, as wage rates have increased elsewhere, perhaps it hasn't increased as much in Bermuda. And so there's a tightening of that gap between what somebody might make in places like, East Asia or even North America and the UK or Europe. Then you do have to get them here, and they have to be able to live here, comfortably. That is, when people start to do some research, and there's a lot of information available on the internet now for any type of a prospective employee looking to come to Bermuda, and they realize, hang on a minute, how much am I going to pay in rent? How much is electricity? These questions, start coming across, and so somebody has to really want to work in Bermuda, and we're lucky that Bermuda is a great place to live and work, and that's a big draw. But with the lead-in times of looking globally, finding somebody that's skilled, it's a bit of a lottery. Making sure that the person is going to work in Bermuda, does have the skills needed. You don't know, they're however many thousands of miles away. So there's a lot of times that you're taking a bit of a big chance, and they don't all work out.
Yeah.
And so, I'd much rather focus on developing talent locally, but there's just, we talk about the unemployment rate being so low, but really it's very much in the negative, because we bring in, just across the board, 30% of our workforce across all industries. We have to import.
Bermuda generally.
And it's pretty consistent in the construction industry as well. It's about 25 to 30% of our entire industry workforce is made up of expat workers. So when you have 2% unemployment on the Bermuda side, 30% overemployment on expat side, it's like a negative 27% unemployment rate, in my opinion.
So
want to look at it
what's
that way.
it like to be a manager then, managing 70% workforce, Bermudian, 30% non-Bermudian, and you got a cultural mix going on? What sort of things come up?
Culture is really important. When I was in college, I remember this textbook I was struck by. It's called Culture's Consequences. And it was this, full study on just the different types, in various cultures, how did people treat money, entrepreneurship, working hours, all these things, that there are consequences to different cultures working together and being mixed together. And I think in Bermuda, I think maybe even Rudy talked about this, you have all types of people who are ready to work 60 hours a week and kill it. And then you have some people that, that's not really their industry. They're in it just for a job. We have all those types, and all those types of people exist in Canada and the UK. And if we went to employ people there, you'd probably get all flavors here. But the expats that come here to work for us in Bermuda generally come to work. as many hours as they can for as much as they can, and send it all back. So
Get it, leave it.
yeah, and so you mix those two cultures of average people and workaholics in the same basket. It can create weird dynamics, and as an employer, it's difficult to when you have to the work has to be profitable, or else you're going to lose money and everybody's going to lose a job. So you have to make things profitable, and you have to manage those different expectations of employees and different cultures together in the same workplace. It can be challenging.
So this is one of the best times to be Bermudian looking for a job, because there's
I think we've always had it good, to be honest.
yes.
But I do think there's quite a bit of opportunity. There's a lot in our industry, in the construction industry. We have this weird dynamic. I would say we're probably the most entrepreneurial of the industries. When you look at how many firms there are in our industry of 2,000 or some odd employees, there's hundreds and hundreds of firms. So individual workers that are plumbers or electricians or the like. And so there's very much an entrepreneurial spirit, as well as having the opportunity to have jobs. And so, yes, I do think it's a great time to be looking for a job.
I think you said it's a good time to be an employee working in construction, because then you're going to get the training, and pretty soon you can get your own business.
That's what happens.
you're
That's
saying?
kind of the Bermudian way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did not? How many locals in the construction industry do you know that quickly sort of, you can pick them out pretty early, the ones that are really switched on, that are figure out the stuff quickly, and they're going to find opportunities to do their own thing pretty quickly.
I'm going to jump into a couple of topics that I've heard as employer issues, and you can just tell me what you think about them.
Sure.
Is that fair? Employee engagement, and in particular, I've been talking about engagement, morale, employee relations, things like managing conflict and grievances. Any comment? Any thoughts?
Sure. I think Bermuda generally, we're such a small place, and so we don't. A lot of our companies and businesses don't get that critical mass. And in a lot of instances, there are larger companies that do, I think, a good job with employee engagement and communication, and all of the buzzwords, the business buzzwords.
Yeah.
But I think, again, you look at the average size of a company in the construction industry of something like 3 people. And when you're 3 people, you don't have an HR department and a corporate strategy and all these other things. And so it can be difficult for anybody but the larger businesses to have lots of.
My sister and my brother and my cousin work in IB, where all those things
isn't it
true? And so therefore, shouldn't I be to expect them from you as well?
That's tough as a local business to be compared against IB, who are global, conglomerates, lots of them that, can, like you say,
world headquarters in Bermuda with world standards in Bermuda.
Yeah. It's a tough comparison.
Some other things I've heard about were how do we manage output, productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness, change management. Is our workforce ready to think about change, because the business might be changing itself, or you might need to put in technology? The difficulties around retaining employees, because when you actually have a small workforce like we do and not enough people, you said 70% Bermudian, 30% non-Bermudian, that means that there's some people moving around to try and find the best opportunity, to try to get promoted, what the case is. It means that how does that business continue to operate in a way that seems seamless to the person that's actually buying from that business, right? Recruitment challenges you talked about. We talked about culture, financial management. We didn't talk about that, just the pressures of being in business and trying to do the best that you can for all the employees as well, because, everybody deserves to have pay increase and promotion and great health care if that's what you're giving. And let alone compliance issues. And probably the last one, workforce diversity. That's the big one. We talked about culture a little bit, but it's just, if Bermuda really has 8,000 jobs available and we're looking to fill those jobs, and we're already sort of 70% with a 30% expat workforce, that means that diversity is going to always be part of it. So there are some people still that think sometimes, expat go home, or I wish you weren't here, or I think we have to be careful what we wish for, because if that 30% was to not be here, we would have a much different life. And part of that also is what we do socially. We also need that workforce to help us to work on the weekends and holidays and nights when we don't really want to work and we want to do our social stuff. So It's a really interesting dynamic. Appreciate you coming out. We'll be right back.
It's time for the Data Break with Stephen McGinnis.
Great. Thanks, Marika and Alex, for that great discussion about the role of the employers within the employment ecosystem. Now, one of the things Alex mentioned was about the composition of Bermuda's workforce. So I think we've been able to look back at this for the last 30 years. So let's take a look at some of our data that we have on this. So if we go back to 1990, over here, you can see that we had about 77% of our workforce was Bermudian. Fast forward over all this time period, so we have our peak employment in 2008, where the representative of Bermuda was about 67%. And then fast forward to 2022, it's about 70%. So it's declined slightly, but we're around 70%. Now, Alex mentioned a number in his discussion about 30%. 30% of our workforce requires overseas labor. So how do we see that? Well, if we look at our non-Bermudians that are hired in the workforce, along with spouses and PRC holders, you can see that we have 30%. And this trend has remained fairly consistent since 2008. You can also see prior to that how have built our economy around trying to grow some of the overseas labor over this period. But you can see it's remained relatively constant around the 30% mark for the last 15 years now. So they're showing that we need to have a reliance on foreign labor to come and support our workforce and support the economy in order to achieve maximum potential. Now, next part is how many employees are actually hired here? So again, Alex mentioned some numbers about size of firm within the construction industry. So let's look at how employment is across all of Bermuda. So within the large firms, which is the blue line, you can see that there's about, we're around 15,500 employees. This is down from 2008 when it was just over 21,000. Now these are companies with 50 plus staff to them. And then next one is the medium-sized companies, which are 10 to 49 staff. And again, you can see they were around 9,500 in 2008. And they did have some growth from 2014 to 2019. And then they've had some impact during COVID in this phase too. And then we have our small and micro business sector. So the small business being the orange line, the micro sector being the red line. And these are your sole traders, the 1 to 4 man and people operations. And then the orange is kind of your smaller business that has up to 10 staff. As you can see, they've also remained fairly steady, but this is kind of your core small business enterprise across all of Bermuda. So let's look at another way, which is actually how much do they represent of the total workforce? So these are just employee numbers. So if we hit our next data, you can see the percentage of the hires within each sector. So our large companies represent about 53% of employment in 2008. And you can see the spread across our medium and small businesses there too. Fast forward, and we get to 2022. The large companies have moved from 53% to 48.7%. So about 4% variance there. But that is also showing the shift of workforce that we've actually seen decline of hiring within and employment within the larger companies, and shifted more to these medium-sized companies, the 10 to 49 employee firms, which have gone from 23% and now has increased to 27%. And one of the important parts of this whole thing is these red and orange lines down here. So these are your true small business. When we say that small business runs the economy, about 25% of all jobs have consistently been hired within a small business across Bermuda. So it shows that underlying layer of how important the small business sector is to our wider ecosystem. Now, another part that Alex had mentioned was about the average number of employees per firm. Now, this is important because smaller companies will not benefit from an HR system. They're not going to benefit from finance, payroll. They're not going to have legal support as much. So they can be a bit more challenging. But when we look across the full industry for the last 20 years, you can see that the red line represents the average, which is about 8.5, 8.6 average employees per firm. Now, the construction industry, as Alex mentioned, was about 3. So we have a 3.9 for 2022. And this has remained down a little bit from where we saw pre-2008. From 2008 to 2012, this actually declined 28% on average to construction companies, which can be quite impactful to their operations. Additionally, we have hospitality, which during COVID, we saw that there was a ramp up of employment pre-COVID. And during COVID, it's about 25% down on average by employment for a firm. Obviously, that's triggered by some of the larger entities in the space, but that's the averages there. And in the one to just note about how change of technology and outsourcing can impact us, financial intermediaries has actually dropped down. I haven't graphed it here, but it's dropped from 43.8 in 2000, way back here, and is now in 2022 at 26.9. That's a decline of 38%. But that shows how technology and outsourcing can change an industry over a short period of time. But anyways, Mariko, I'll leave it there. I'll pass it back to you now.
And welcome back. So we've talked about the employee and we've talked about the employer. Now let's tie it all together. Joining us right now, Derek Smith to take us home. Derek, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. My background is actually human resources / career development and coaching. Most recently, I worked for the Department of Workforce Development in career development. Prior to that, I was executive director of Bermuda Career Center, which eventually amalgamated into the Department of Workforce Development. Prior to that, I was recruited from overseas by the hospital as a human resources manager. So they do recruit Bermudians from overseas. And I have extensive human resources background with various companies, including McDonald's and the Westin Hotel, AAA of Southern New England, and even worked for Eastern Airlines. Started out as a senior flight attendant. So that goes way, way back, but we won't go that far.
So Bermuda has opportunity. Lots and lots of opportunity. 8,000 jobs need to be filled. Alex, that was with us just now, talked about the fact that we have a 70% workforce that typically is Bermudian. And for a very long established time, we've had a 30% non-Bermudian workforce. We have, though, in addition, we have a bit of a declining younger people in terms of coming to work, and we have a bit of an increase in the people that are of age needing to work a little bit longer. So tell us about what you think about the senior workforce. Let's just talk about them for a minute. What's the opportunity for them?
I will call them the baby boomers then.
The baby boomers.
Sure. There are opportunities, not enough. I think that, and based on my experience, there should be more opportunities afforded to the senior population because as we are living longer, certainly there are many who still have the energy, they have it all, and they can contribute so much to the company as well as the development of the younger folks who are coming on board, because we hear about training. In addition to that, training should be coaching. You know, you hear about communication. You know, you can communicate all the time, or you want to push someone, but there's an art to pushing and prompting and coaching. And so that's where the use of understanding what you need to do to prompt someone, not to necessarily push them or to thrust them, but sometimes to gently guide them.
Yeah, I think the older we get, the more we can mentor others.
Yes.
So you may not have the formal teaching around coaching, but you definitely have some maturity and you've got some life experience that you can pass on. And that absolutely helps the workforce tremendously, especially with younger people that don't have that experience yet. So I remember somebody saying something to me. What they said was, you said workforce development, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so workforce development, you go there because you can help somebody build their resume. Yeah?
Yes.
You can help teach them skills
Yes.
so they can be in that job interview and do a really good job to help
Job
preparation. That's fantastic. And then hopefully they get that job and then off to the races.
Yes.
So let me tell you how somebody said this to me. What you might have done was help that person lie on their resume, help that person not necessarily present themselves in truth on the interview. They get the job, and then one day after probation, they turn into a monster because the real them pops out. They got the job, and, you know, it is what it is. So tell me about that. What do you think about the two sides of that dynamic? It's two sides of that coin. Now, it's not everybody's on the same side of that coin, but it's a story. Tell me about the story.
Well, first of all, you should not lie on your resume. there are ways that you can reword your resume
Yep.
so it's more palatable to the potential employer, but certainly you don't oversell or sell yourself in being able to generate or produce what you can't produce.
Yeah.
So yes, we've had those situations, and certainly in my current capacity, because I'm working with them now in a similar capacity, we are working on having an individual understand the importance of becoming one with your resume. Now, we know that for many people, you speak with a lot of slang or whatever, and so you have to move away from that. So we show them how to properly word it
Hmm.
so that it's telling a true story.
Yeah.
Also, it's the coaching that comes along with that in terms of not only being able to get the job, but keep the job. And unfortunately, there are situations where the day after probationary period is up, closet door opens up and the skeletons start falling out.
What does the manager do?
What the manager should do is to uh, provide support to that individual. See, oftentimes we just want to shut the door because let's say it's an employer's market to some degree where they can afford to pick, choose, and refuse. Um, but you also want to lend some support to enable this individual to correct some things. And so I find that they're not getting enough of that in the workplace, the support.
That's great. Tell me about the cell phone. That thing, that thing. Tell us about cell phone.
Well, I was only on the phone for a minute. I was just, like, well, yeah, and that's something that we talk about repeatedly.
Yeah.
Um, if you are on the company time, then you're on the company time. That means that the cell phone, which is personal, should be away. Unless you get permission from your supervisor or your manager, you should not be on your phone during company time. But because we have become so socially accepting of just
Mhm.
picking up our phone and calling or doing social media or checking to see what's going on, like the world's going to end if I don't get on, if I don't find out what's going on. Yeah. And so it's hard to understand that. And some people, they have to actually go into counseling because you can't detach me from this device. This is my lifeline. And the employers, not to say that they should, but it's offering more support and trying to coach the individual in understanding that you will have your time during your breaks, but not during my time. And
Yep.
so that's one of the bigger challenges, one of the bigger complaints that I hear from people who have been unfortunately terminated because of excessive abuse of cell phones. Um, it's this is a different world we're living in now. The average person, they go to sleep with a cell phone on their nightstand or the iPad on the bed or whatever, and so you're bringing your social behavior into the workplace. And
I've heard some people talk about anxiety, and with the cell phone, it's like you get so many inputs from the cell phone that a person can actually melt down.
yes,
But then when they put it down, because they don't have the inputs, they melt down and have anxiety. Either way, I mean, it's interesting. And a lot of managers have a hard time dealing with it. A lot of employees have a hard time putting it down. Very, very tough. So I have a question. What do you think it means to be a Bermudian employee in Bermuda right now? In the context of we need 8,000 more people. We're 70-30 right now, or historically have been 70-30 in terms of 70% Bermudians, 30% non-Bermudians. We need 8,000 more, which is going to tip those percentages a little bit. Culturally, things have to be different. I need to change my expectations. How do I feel about the fact that I might not be able to find the house that I want or the apartment that I want, and more non-Bermudians come into the workforce can cause me to feel differently? How do you think we need to approach what does it mean to be a Bermudian employee in the Bermudian workforce to be successful with all that going on?
one of the things that I encourage people to do is to look at ways that you can fine tune, you can continue to invest in yourself. And I tell people, listen, it's time to get uncomfortable. You have to step outside of this comfort zone. If you want to grow, then you have to understand that you have to continue to invest in yourself. And that's also being able to take feedback from your employer, from your manager, and apply that to your life, to your career. And so it's very important that the Bermudian understand that the opportunity is there and the potential for growth is there, but you're not entitled to it.
Ooh.
And that's the
Oh.
key thing is entitlement.
What does that mean? What are you talking about?
Entitlement.
What are you talking? What are you
Well,
talking?
listen,
I don't know what you're talking about. You just said. What are you talking
I'm
about?
supposed to get this job because I'm Bermudian. I'm supposed to be promoted because I'm Bermudian. This an expat, they're not supposed to be promoted. So this is a prevailing mindset in some.
Why isn't it enough that because I'm Bermudian, I should get the job because? Why isn't that enough?
That's a good question.
I showed up. I'm here. I'm local.
Question.
You owed me because you told me the story that it should be mine. So why isn't the fact that I showed up enough?
Productivity.
Ooh, productivity.
Productivity, yes. And that's key. Because I'll do just enough to get by. My functions are, I'm supposed to do this, that, and the other. I'll do this and that, and I'll do part of the other, but that should be okay. I call it situational working. You know, I'll work, but. And so it's about productivity.
Tell you another story. So it's a bit personal. I've had to go online and I've had to say this to somebody. Somebody said, Mr. Thomas, Mariko, whatever you can say to me, you should do better. Talking about a work-related issue. And I had to turn that around and say, but you need to understand it was your cousin. And you need to tell your cousin to do better because you've known them for 12 years. I've only known them for 12 minutes. Why are you asking me to do something that you don't even expect with that person yourself?
Because your name is employer. That's your responsibility.
But then, again, we have to consider this. And that's why I say, what does it mean for us to be Bermudian as employees? If we're in a situation where we have 70% Bermudians, 30% non-Bermudian, at some point in time, we're going to be promoting non-Bermudians into management.
Yes.
That non-Bermudian management is going to be held to a very interesting standard because at any point in time, somebody could say to them, I'm going to report you to immigration. And they may be, ooh. Or the manager might say, if you don't perform, I'm going to send you home. They can't then send them home, the money home to their family. So they may perform at a higher standard than the Bermudian would who might give you the break. Right?
Yes.
So if the expat then feels that they might have to perform like a square in a very square box according to the letter, what does that mean for that dynamic?
Because their purpose is different. Their purpose in being here is to work and to make money and to probably send money home to support their family.
Yep.
For Bermudians, it's like, well, I want a job. I need to keep a roof over my head, put food on my table, support my children or whatever. But I don't see it like that.
But then that expat, you're going to say, or the employer might say, well, that guy's so hard on me. I'd much rather work with Reggie because Reggie's cool. And that guy right there, he needs to go back where he came from. Why is it got to be all extra?
Well, it's about creating your own bar. Sometimes you want people to come to where you are versus you're even meeting halfway or challenging yourself to go higher.
Yeah.
So it's about, well, I'm in my comfort zone. This is where I am. So why do I need to do that? That's, you're being preferential because you're giving them favoritism. And when we hear about unconscious biasness and so forth. Well, yeah, but because of this, because of that. But we have to get rid of this excusitis. There's always an excuse. It's always easier for me to blame you than it is for me to be accountable, to hold myself accountable. And that's what we need to really start thinking about as well. How am I accountable? What role did I play or should I have played in this?
Hold up the mirror first.
Exactly.
Mirror first, the other person second.
Exactly.
One last quick thing. Standards. Standards. The standard is this. Should I you said that we should be patient. We should nurture. We should mentor. We should give another chance. If that company over here and that company over there, this one is able to achieve a higher standard, they might have higher turnover, and this one doesn't. But you keep buying from over there. The community buys from over there. How can this place that has lower standards, that's giving more breaks, that's giving more opportunity, how do they compete? How does the business compete when we have this difference in standards, and the standards might be driving the ability for a business to stay in business? How does the employee reconcile standards, unionization, mentorship, giving breaks? What do you do with that one?
I was thinking about it prior to coming here, and for some reason, the word incentivizing continues to come to play. And it's not incentivizing in terms of rewarding, but looking at the culture. We have a particular culture here in Bermuda.
Yeah.
So how do we go about understanding that culture and then applying whatever you need to attain or maintain a particular standard across the table? You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
So we think about how do we incentivize cashiers? You know, go to cashiers and say, "Oh, how you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. Wow. I went out for my birthday last year, and I had an experience at a facility, a restaurant. And though it was very expensive, when I think about it, I don't think about the cost. I think about the experience, because the server, she was so engaging. She was always just outside of my view, but she's always there, but always very personable. She made you feel welcome. And yes, that's something that they get trained in. But how do we then train? Because we hear people complaining about customer service. You go online, customer service complaints, customer service. How do we then raise that standard, raise that bar?
Yep.
So it's not just going to a store or takeout restaurant or whatever. It's, okay, blah, 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 blah. That's it. Okay, thank you.
But I also think, and we're going to wrap this up pretty soon, but I also think that when you start talking about standards, when we start thinking about the employee and the arc, their employment, where they're going to go, and the fact that there's so much opportunity in Bermuda, we've got to all take some responsibility in training and development. It cannot be just the employee. It's got to be you at home. We do have employees that are coming out into the workforce right now that can't make change.
Yes.
They have to be taught better.
Yeah.
They have to understand. Parents, the community needs to understand, you cannot over here high-five the fact that we got over on the boss. You hooked me up, and you helped me not get caught being late. And then right over here, I'm having an argument around, I had poor service. I am the same. I am the problem. I can't celebrate this and complain about that, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
We have to all get involved in talking to each other so that we are all understanding that this boat, it floats better when we all do the right thing, and we have to hold that mirror up. I love the analogy when you talked about some self-accountability, because that makes a big difference. And we are going to go through a lot more Bermudians, a lot more people coming into Bermuda, and we have to talk about cultural stuff and diversity, and it takes time. It takes time for that cultural diversity for us to kind of knit when we have so many new people coming in.
So what I've extracted from what you've said is we have to move as a collective. It should be coming from home. Some of it should be coming from home, but it's not.
It's got to come from home. It's got to come from the church. It's got to come from the education system. It's got to come from the soccer field. It cannot just be the employer.
Exactly.
Because the employer, who also will be hiring a non-Bermudian person at some point in the management, who will be more inclined to hold to a standard, will not tolerate it and can't, because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them. And then that creates a really bad dynamic. So when we start, and I go back to the question, what does it mean to be a Bermudian as an employee, understanding all of the different challenges to be employed? It cannot be just, I showed up and I got money. You got to take some responsibility for the fact that that Bermudian there is there because you didn't have enough children, by the way. 8,000 people is how many we need. You need to, I don't know how many you have, but you need to do a little bit more. And on that note, I'm going to say good night and thank you for coming out.
Connect, learn, and grow with the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce. Benefit from government engagement, exposure, and community interaction. Join a network of successful leaders and innovators. Access exclusive resources, events, and discounts. Help us shape the future of Bermuda business. Join the Chamber today. Visit bermudachamber.bm. Experience the magic of summer at Bermuda's Harbor Nights. Craft markets, family fun, delicious food, and cultural immersion. Get ready to live unforgettable evenings filled with entertainment and community spirit. Don't miss out. From May 15th to August 28th, Harbor Nights await. An initiative of the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce.